Namaskar. Apologies for the slightly delayed start. This is Sree Iyer and you are at PGurus, and let's welcome our guest of the day, Sree Kalavai Venkat, as we analyze what is happening post-elections. How did the elections turn out for some parties, and this inexplicable 10 crore grant, which is now being opposed by the Vishwa Hindu Parishad in Maharashtra. Let's now welcome Kalavai Venkatji. Venkatji, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel. How are you, sir?
Namaste, I'm doing very well. How are you, Sree Iyer?
I'm doing well, sir. The question I have in my mind, I just want to put a bit of a context here. My good friend François Gauthier runs a 𝗖𝙗𝗃𝗖 𝗖𝙩𝙨 museum in Punyanagari, Pune. And he has been, this is a fairly big museum because it has one of the most extensive archives of the farmans that Aurangzeb issued during his multi-decade rule. Very, very detailed how this guy took pride in destroying Hindu artifacts, Hindu temples, Hindus, what have you. Now, when Fadnavis was the chief minister, not this time but the previous time, he had visited Fadnavis and he had explained to him about the museum. He had invited him to come to the museum. And Fadnavis was so impressed with the work that he gave an 8 crore grant then and there. This is when problems started. The official who was supposed to execute it found some excuse or the other to not give him that grant. Till today, François is still struggling to keep it up because other than school children who come and watch maybe once a year, it's not much crowd going there. I want to keep telling you guys, if you happen to be in Pune, you need to know your history because I'm going to show you some results of Maharashtra that will kind of, shock you. Anyway, this is just to want to set perspective. This 10 crore grant, is it just an announcement or will it be issued? 100% it will be issued. This is what India does. It sticks it to Hindus and it will give over their head. What is this snub appeal, Kalavai Venkat? Why does the BJP say, stick it to me, stick it to me? Why are they saying this?
So is it just the BJP? That's the question we should ask Sree Iyer. Okay, the problem I think runs much deeper.
I'll answer this question. Yeah. BJP is the last hope for Hindus. Okay.
I understand.
We already have given up on the others. Go ahead, sir.
I know. But the way I'm seeing it is, BJP is the inevitable consequence of nearly 200 years of Hindu intelligentsia in remaining in total denial about Islam. Right? So time and again, if you look at it, go through the last 150 or 200 years, even look at many Hindu gurus. I'm not going to name anyone, but most of you know the ones I'm referring to. It's not one or two, multiple Hindu gurus. In the 19th century, in the 20th century, they have praised Islam. They have praised Muhammad. And then they have praised or they have sided with most of the hardcore Islamic demands. Take a simple example, right? That of the cult of Sufi worship among the Hindus. I'm not talking about the Muslims. I'm talking about the Hindus, among whom there is a huge Sufi cult worship. Okay, many of them will visit dargahs, many of them will worship the Sufis and everyone. So even though it was the Sufis that repeatedly urged that there be a jihad against India, right? They repeatedly urged, and they were the vanguard of Islamic jihad against India. And they were the ones who were behind the entire notion of 𝗤𝙗𝘗 𝗲𝙗𝘗. So regardless of the fact, in spite of the fact that hundreds of our temples, thousands of our temples were sacked, demolished and everything, our own Hindu gurus have time and again praised Islam, have accommodated Islam. Then fast forward a little bit, comes the colonial rule. Under the colonial rule, the British favored the Muslims for military recruitment and generally as a policy of divide and rule. Then when you fast forward a little bit, that's where a lot of troubles start, with Jawaharlal Nehru taking over as the Prime Minister of India. What he does is to create constitutional provisions for personal law to guide the Muslim life, whereas the rest of Hindus, who are 80% of India's population, would be guided by uniform civil code or the common civil code. Muslims were exempted from that, and then they were allowed to be governed by their personal law. And then all the other institutions, right? When you look at All India Muslim Personal Law Board, the Wakf body, and all of these institutions were made secure by these kind of constitutional provisions. So even when you look at our own Hindutva icons, right? Some of the giants, some of the great people whom I admire a lot. If you look at them when they talk about 𝗼𝗚𝘅, there are a few organizations like BHP and probably most Hindutva organizations now understand the importance of doing that and the necessity of carrying out 𝗼𝗚𝘅. However, you go back to the early Hindutva leaders, they were not focused on, or they were not even interested in converting the Muslims to Hinduism. Their argument was, whether you're a Muslim or a Hindu or whoever it is, if you are part of India, then your Sanskriti is the Hindu Sanskriti. Okay, so most of them are happy so long as somebody recognized their Hindu Sanskriti, but continued to remain Muslim. Okay, so we have to look at what Maharashtra is doing as yet another straw on the back of the camel. Okay, we have been loading one straw after the other for 200 years and been in total, in fact, more than 200 years. If you go back a little bit, you have a lot of these Nirguna Bhakti movements that arose, especially in northern India, starting with Kabir and a lot of others. And when you look at all of them, what do you find them? They kind of equate Hinduism and Islam. And then they all take stances against idol worship or Vigraha Upasana, as in Hinduism. And then they write verses ridiculing Hindus' notion of sacredness, Hindu forms of worship, everything. So the ground has been prepared for several centuries for this kind of appeasement of Muslims, in this kind of whitewashing of Islam, this kind of naked and brazen display of dimitude. This has been happening among Hindus in Hindu society for several centuries, especially in the last 200 years, when the Hindu gurus, the Hindu political leaders, all bent over backwards to appease Muslims and to accommodate Islam. So we have to see what is happening in Maharashtra, where the BJP has, or the coalition government has granted 10 crore rupees to the Wakf board, which, like you correctly said, would be 100% handed over to them. There's no doubt about it. But see this as a consequence of what we have been doing for nearly 200 years non-stop. But once you factor in the Nirguna Bhakti movements and others, the Sufi movement, etc., we have been doing this for centuries, right? And what we are seeing today is the just inevitable consequence of all of those things. And the fundamental challenge is, the fundamental problem and the issue here is, we Hindus have not even realized the threat we are facing. Islam requires those institutions, whether it is their personal law board, their Wakf board, or any other Islamic organization or entity which writes their fiqh and other commentaries. Islam needs those institutions. And Mahabharata specifically teaches us, if you want to vanquish the enemy, take away his weapons and his wherewithal. But we don't learn that lesson. This is a very fundamental lesson of Mahabharata, but we have not learned it. Instead, we have just gone ahead and then we have been appeasing those who seek our destruction. Or we have been sustaining an ideology that teaches its followers to go ahead and destroy Hindus.
You know, somebody just opined that the finance department is under Ajit Pawar, and that's a very strange reality here. But you know, this could have been done just to embarrass the government. I don't know what exactly it is. Ajit Pawar is known for these kind of theatrics and mischief. So NCP is known for this. So why did you go and hitch up with them? You didn't need to. So these are all things that BJP doesn't seem to realize. I see somewhere, I thought they were savvy. Around about 5-6 years ago, after the second win, they seem to have lost their way a little bit. Just my personal observations, I could be wrong, because I'm seeing all these things, and this is not going to stop. Also, viewers, slightly digressing from this topic, but I still on topic. You know, India has been systematically clamping down on FCRA licenses for NGOs, so that these guys don't bring money in to use it for conversion. Guess what is happening now? The same entities have started using software companies, other companies, where they deliver some product for which they get compensated by foreign bodies. Now, will the income tax office have the brains? They are all IITs. If you look at IRS guys, most of them got their IIT degree, which means they have engineering brains. Will they be able to apply those brains to find out which is right and which is wrong? I'm just asking a question. This cannot be solved by looking at using software. You have to do it a little bit more deeper. Anyway, I'm hoping that they'll rediscover their engineering talent and find out what is right and what is wrong. And God save you if you try to say that something is wrong and you try to close one institution. See what happens. Anyway, this is the reality of the situation today. Venkatji, I want to take the next topic also, because this is something which is even more interesting, because viewers need to know the Thakurs who got pissed off, the Brahmins who got pissed off, the Dalits who got pissed off. You want to see the result of your getting pissed off? Let's take a look at the first slide. This is 𝗒𝙗𝘀 Lok Sabha seat. Okay, there are 6 assembly constituencies here, and look at the vote percentage. All except the last one, Malegaon Central, the BJP led comfortably. But Malegaon Central, which is majority Muslim, 95% showed up to vote. Look at how much Congress got and how much BJP got. It gets even worse as I show you some more data, but let this thing sink in. Venkat, how do we drill it into Hindus that you bloody guys, you have a responsibility to go and vote?
I think Maharashtra example, you gave a very good one. And then we also looked at Faizabad, right? Faizabad constituency is where Ayodhya is located. That's where after 500 years of struggle, we rebuilt the Ram Janmabhoomi Mandir, and then we did the Prana Pratishtha, everything, where the BJP lost. Again, once again there, my numbers may be a little bit off, I'm just quoting from memory. I think the population is 28% of them are Muslims, and I think that's another 12 or 13% Yadavs. Okay, as far as the left ecosystem is concerned, all they have to do is to appease the religious minorities, particularly the Muslims, and to a lesser extent Christians. In the south, it's Christians. In Punjab, it's Christians. But in northern part of India, it is Muslims. So they have to appease them, and they have to get one jati or 2 jatis into the kitty. For example, Samajwadi Party has perfected the equation of Muslims and Yadavs combining and giving about 40%. So when you look at this, at the beginning of the race, those who seek the destruction of Hinduism, like the left political system, they are starting with a 40-41% vote advantage. Okay, and unless otherwise, the rest of the Hindus decide, just as Muslims are voting in their self-interest, rather with the sole interest of converting India into Darul Islam, and by denying Hindus their political rights, that's how they wish to achieve that. And then for that, they are willing to vote as a bloc. And then if Hindus don't realize the need for them to rise above distinctions like caste, distinctions like language we speak, regionalism, and all of these things, we are slated for destruction. Because, see, at the end of the day, democracy is about 2 things. It's about the lowest common denominators in society exercising their free will. Okay, so these people may not really understand what they are doing. So, for example, a vast majority of Muslims may not even understand the consequence of Islamic teachings or what it does to them, but they will vote as a bloc. That's the way democracy works. The lowest common denominators will vote together as a bloc and have a disproportionate say. And you might have read Nicholas Nassim Taleb's book, Skin in the Game. There he talks about this repeatedly, where he says the intransigent and intolerant minority always wins. Unless or otherwise, the majority wakes up. He gives a few examples, right? He talks about why the entire world would be eating halal in the future. Why? The reason is simple. Muslims will only eat halal food. They will boycott anything which is not halal. Whereas non-Muslims, whether they are Christians, whether they are Hindus, whether they are Buddhists, if they are eating meat or if they are consuming any other product, they don't care whether it's halal or whether it is jatka meat. So because of that, if you are a restaurant owner, you will be serving halal meat, because then you can attract Muslim as well as non-Muslim customers. But if you are only serving jatka meat, then the Muslims will boycott, and nobody wants to run a business where a section of society will be boycotting you. Okay, so now Hindus have to realize this. The system is loaded against them. Okay, Muslims are going to vote in their self-interest, and that's why I brought up the example of Nicholas Nassim Taleb. He points out the entire world will be eating halal unless otherwise non-Muslims come together, the majority in every society comes together and says, this far and no further. Okay, we will not make any more concessions. I think that's the realization that has to happen among the Hindus, because we are looking at, like you correctly said, we are looking at the last milestone, which can serve as the bulwark of defense for Hinduism. And if we don't realize the need to rise about caste distinctions, and if you allow the minority votes to consolidate, especially when they are voting against Hindu interests, then we are slotted for destruction. Take even Tamil Nadu, right? Tamil Nadu, it's the same equation. Nobody knows the exact percentage, because while the Christian percentage is 5 or 6% on the paper, it is sometimes estimated it could be as high as 20%. And then you have another 8 or 9% Muslims. So once again, the DMK is starting with a 30%, 35% vote block advantage. Okay, to break that, Hindus have to consolidate themselves and not be divided by jati and other things. I don't think there's a simple fix, but this is a fundamental problem among Hindus.
It gets worse than this, Venkat. I'm going to show you another set of results. And in this, the opponent is not Congress, but Uddhav Thackeray's Shiv Sena. Viewers, for those of you who don't know the antecedents of Shiv Sena is a Hindutva party, much more pro-Hindu than anybody else. If you listen to Balasaheb Thackeray's speeches, you'll understand what I mean. Now let's take a look at the next slide. So this is
you mentioned Balasaheb Thackeray, so I just wanted to point an example, right? So I think this happened sometime in the late 60s. So when Shiv Sena was still a fledgling organization, and then the Mumbai Municipal Council was attempting to destroy a temple or a makeshift temple of the Hare Krishna movement. Okay, so it was Balasaheb Thackeray who stepped in and then stopped those things. So he, and like you correctly said, the Shiv Sena and the Thackeray family have been actually at the forefront of defending Hinduism in Maharashtra in particular. Of course, you know, the political greed of Uddhav Thackeray and his short-sightedness, myopic thinking, it led to the split and all these things. But what you said is absolutely right. Go ahead with your data points.
Yeah, could we just expand on this picture, make our picture smaller and make the slide deck a little bit easier to read? Thank you. So viewers, I hope you can read this thing. This is one of the MP seats in Mumbai area. Okay, Mihir Kotecha is BJP, Sanjay Patil is Uddhav Thackeray, Shiv Sena, and look at the numbers. Look at the one that is marked, which is Mankud Shivaji Nagar. Look at the switch away. Okay, and that decisively swung the vote for the Shiv Sena Uddhav Thackeray. Next slide, please. This is even more interesting. These are specific booth numbers, and look at the number of votes the BJP has polled. 0, 2, 4, 9, 7, 6, 8, 5, 8, 7, 6, 4, 66. I can't believe that this area, such as Rafiq Nagar, Zakir Hussain Nagar, Furkania Chowk, Govandi, this is right in the middle of Mumbai, guys. I can't believe that there are no Hindus here. What pissed off the Hindus against BJP here? If you get these kinds of votes, BJP, what the heck are you going to do? Your state elections are coming 4 months from now.
So simple reason, right? Simple answer is Sree Iyer. In all these places, 95% of the Muslims came out and voted. And then they voted against the BJP. That's how the instructions were carried out and announcements are made from the mosques. Then in every channel possible, social media and everywhere. And then they were told to wait till 2 p.m., 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and then go and cast their votes in block against the BJP with the sole intent of defeating the BJP wherever they could. That's why in some places they strategically voted for Shiv Sena. When you go to Uttar Pradesh, they voted strategically for the Samajwadi Party and other things, right? In contrast, probably 55-60% of the Hindus came out and voted, and their vote was split, right? They voted across various political parties, and in bigger cities, like you point out, like Mumbai and other places, probably Hindus did not even show up to vote. A large number of them did not show up.
the other challenge that India has, Hindus have, for example, ask yourself, viewers, some of those of you who are in watching it from India, 80% of our viewers are from India. Calculate the age of your son or daughter or grandson or granddaughter, at what age they are getting married. I'm willing to stick my neck out and say it is upwards of 30 years of age. By the time you settle down, then you find chemistry, then you have progeny, you are already pushing late 30s and early 40s. What is happening is you are missing a complete generation. You are missing a complete generation. So every election moving forward is going to be harder and harder and harder and harder for the BJP to win if you're going to stick to, I'm a Thakur, I won't vote for that guy because he's not Thakur. I'm a Brahmin, I won't vote for this guy because he's not a Brahmin. We are spread evenly, not evenly, but we are spread all over. Every caste, every community. You have to think differently. Unless we take lessons from our defeat, right, we will never improve. This is the reality today. Many of us need to understand that it's our responsibility to see that our children get married in their 20s. I had this example given to me. A 34-year-old Hindu man goes to his Muslim friend to give him his invitation card, wedding invitation card. And the Muslim friend receives it, and then he sees his grandson coming and, calling him grandpa and starts playing with him. You see the difference, right? One guy has already married and got children. The children also have married and they have procreated. Somewhere along the line, this should have been caught by even Congress. It doesn't matter. Once this becomes a solid number where they can essentially win the election or lose the election for one party, they are going to enslave them. You will have a Hindu prime minister in name only. Everything. You're seeing that happening in Kerala today. You're seeing that happening in Tamil Nadu today. People just don't want to admit it. You saw that happen in Andhra Pradesh, except that Jagan Reddy didn't know the bounds. He went overboard, and that's why he has been defeated. But give him 5 years, he will come and repent and say, this thing's Manin Chandi, that in Chandi, Uchin Chandi, and they will go back and vote for him. People are essentially emotional when they vote, when it should not be. If there's one time that you should not be emotional, that is when you cast your vote. Maintain a report card for the 5 years. Write down what I like or I don't like. Put the party name because you don't know which contestant it will be. Try to come up with a number to quantify, okay, this guy has done better overall over the 5 years and therefore I will vote for him.
To play the devil's advocate, Sree Iyer. So, we are talking about, how Hindus should overcome their Jati affinities and other things when they vote, and they should vote rationally in Hindu interest, right? I have no disagreement with that. But at the same time, we should, if we want to win this war, we should understand why Hindus are voting along caste lines or along Jati lines, right? So, India has been colonized for the last 1300 years or so, starting from 712 with the invasion of Sindh by Qasim. India has been colonized non-stop. First by the Muslims for over 1,000 years, then by Christian European colonizers for another 250 years. And India suffered one famine after the other. Hindus were dhimmis in their own land. We had to pay jizya. Our women were forcibly abducted and sold into sex slavery and everything, right? So just take the example, 1943 famine, about officially 4 million Bengalis were killed in a matter of few months. The unofficial figure could be as high as 7 or 8 million. That was in a few months, in 1 year, 1943. So Madhushree Mukherjee has written an excellent book on Churchill's Secret War, where she talks about the various famines. For example, when Robert Clive was running the East India Company out of Kolkata, over a span of 7 or 8 years, the population of Bengal was reduced by 1/3, from 30 million down to 20 million. So 1/3 of the population getting wiped out, and then all of this happening over a span of 7 or 8 years is genocide. Okay, nothing short. Then Madan Lal Dhingra, the great freedom fighter, is hanged to death, and before his hanging, he gives a speech. I think he has also written down his memoir. And then he talks about 100 crore, or is it 80? It's 80 million. 80 million Hindus or 80 million Indians who have been killed by the British over the preceding 50 years. Okay, so that means in the 19th century, second half of 19th century in particular, about 80 million Hindus were killed. So in all, we are looking at hundreds of millions of Hindus who have been exterminated, who are impoverished, and who had to suffer famine and everything over 1300 years of colonial history. Who supported them? It was not the government, because the government was the predator in all of those cases. And it was the Jati. It was the caste which came to the rescue. So if you take the Jat community, for example, right? The Jats are a dominant martial caste in northern India. And if you look at them, the practice of niyoga or levirate is still observed among them. But the reason is easy to understand, right? Why do you find these practices among such martial communities? The reason is simple. In the past, when they were fighting the Islamic invaders, most of the people who died in the battlefield were young men. They were in their late teens and early 20s, because by the time you're 30, 35, you are an old man, not fit to fight in the battlefield. So most of those who died were young men, which means they were left behind a young widow, orphan children, and everyone. And that's why in the Jat community, the practice of niyoga was practiced, so that the younger brother will marry the widow of the slain elder brother. So these practices were sustained at the community level, at the level of Jati. So people at the end of the day know, or this is at least their lived experience, that Jati, no matter what, is not only an institution for them to transact matrimony, borrow, loans and all of these things, but even more importantly, when it comes to preserving their self-interest, Jati is going to be the more reliable institution than government promises. So I think if we want to turn the tables, we need to understand this Jati equation better, because what you and I feel, right? We are living in California, and then we are mostly English educated Hindus who grew up in cities and everything. And the way we look at all these things is very different from how a villager in Rajasthan or UP or Maharashtra or Madhya Pradesh will be looking at Jati, right? For them, Jati is sacrosanct, and Jati is what has protected them all these years during famines and everything. So I think the key for us is to recognize this reality and to build unassailable Jati alliances. Okay, so that I think is going to be very critical, because otherwise we'll be criticizing the voter, but then those who want to win the war don't criticize the voters, right? So they point out, yes, this is a mistake, and because of this mistake, these consequences were suffered. But what is critical is to understand why they are voting on the basis of Jati, and why they are not voting on the basis of Hindu identity. So that's where I think it's critical to build the Jati alliances, because as much as we Hindus all share a common strand of dharma, artha, kama, moksha, and all of these things, and a lot of forms of worship, our scriptures, so much we share in common. But also each Jati has its own traditions, its own culture, its own heritage, and everything. So I think that's the reason we have to understand it from an insider perspective, from an Indic perspective, and then we have to form those alliances. Otherwise, we'll be conceding grounds to our enemies.
Venkat, I must disagree with you respectfully, because I see this has enhanced after the Mandal Commission reports. Before that, you had the situation where George Fernandez, a Konkani Christian, could fight from within jail and win an MP seat in Bihar. This used to happen. There wasn't like this may sound like an extreme case, but it has happened. So all I'm saying is that yes, there have been methods used to divide us, and that's what Rahul Gandhi is. He's amping it up now. He is amping it up now. So you and I, we can say, yeah, we don't belong here. We don't, we don't know the situation on the ground. But the situation on the ground, I'll give you an example. Then let us say one constituency has 75% Hindus, 25% Muslims, and the 75% is equally split between Dalits, OBCs, and forward. So 25, 25, 25, right? So in such a scenario, how will the Hindu voter vote? If they vote correctly, they should win.
So This has happened on a few occasions, right? So in the past, lot of occasions when BJP won, they were able to unite. You don't have to get 100% of the Hindus to vote for Hindutva organization, right? So what you need to have is majority. In other words, you have to ensure that a certain percentage of voters transcend their Jati identities and they will vote for the overall Hindutva concept or overall Hindu identity, pan-Indian Hindu identity. That should be one section of voters. But the reason I would highlight the importance of bringing Jati alliances, right? So, for example, take the Jat Hindus of northern India. Uh, uh, During the, not this farm protest, but the one prior to that. At the time, 𝗤𝙘𝗻𝘁 𝗍𝗓 was pointing out that it started in Punjab among the Jat Sikhs, but then the Jat Sikhs sent their emissaries to the Hindu Jat 𝗣𝗃 Panchayat. So in those 𝗣𝗃 Panchayats, Jati appeals are made. Okay, the appeal was made that we are Jat Sikhs and you are Jat Hindus. हम दोनों एक ही जात का है. So you should come and support us. Okay, this was the appeal made to them, and that's how they mobilized the forces. Okay, and then once you concede a little bit of ground, regaining it takes a long time, right? So even though BJP went out of the way to placate the Jats and bring them back into the fold, how enthusiastically they voted is something we can only speculate, right? So that's why I suggest, my suggestion is, Jati is a reality. Okay, whether we like it or not, it's a reality. Okay, whether it will undergo change in the future, absolutely yes. That's what the sociologist 𝗚 Srinivasan has repeatedly pointed out. Has it undergone change in the past? Absolutely yes. Okay, it's a dynamic institution. However, it's important for us not to concede or not to dilute the Jati coalitions we have built, but rather we should bring more Jatis into this coalition so that we have this consolidation, right? So just like your DMK starts with a 30% vote bank advantage, or the Samajwadi Party Congress alliance, the India alliance in UP, started with a 35-40% vote advantage in constituencies like Faizabad. So we have to negate that, right? So negating that means we also have our own Jati coalitions. So these people will vote on the basis of Jati, and hence the power structures come up. And then we have another section of Hindus who are better realized, to understand the importance of transcending regional barriers, language barriers, Jati barriers, everything, and then vote for common Hindu identity. So in that sense, we are not saying two different things, but just that all I'm pointing out is we cannot afford to lose both because our enemy is exploiting those fault lines.
Thank you so much, Venkat. And let's take a few questions now. I urge you to keep the answer short so that we can finish in about 15 minutes time. Venkat Raman Iyer wants to know, it's really shocking that at a time when the talk among citizens is for action to be taken by government against Wakf Board, the Maharashtra government makes a grant of 10 crores. Your views, please. The whole program has been about this, Iyer. Next one, please. Radha Balamurali wants to know, Namaskaram, sir. My worry is how far the information reaches people. After knowing what's going on, cannot sleep peacefully. Time to find quick remedies unitedly, but how? Your response, sir. This is a good question, Venkat.
It's a very good question. I think there is not going to be a quick remedy, right? Because we have been fighting Islam. It started in 712 CE or 712 AD when Qasim invades Sindh. So we have been fighting a 1300-year-old battle. And don't be discouraged. We have actually done better than every other community in the world. Because when Islam was born, between 610 and 632 AD, it spread to the neighboring empires. There were two neighboring empires to Arabia. Arabia is where Islam was born. On the one side, on the western side, they had the Byzantine Empire. It was the Roman Empire, Eastern Roman Empire. It was Christian. And then on the eastern side, they had the Persian Empire. That was Zoroastrian at that time. So partly Zoroastrian, partly Manichaeism, and a lot of other religions. Okay, but mainly Zoroastrian. But what did Islam do? Islam conquered all of those in a matter of 50 or 60 years. Okay, max. Okay, the entire region was taken by Islam. Syria was gone, Iraq was gone, Jordan was gone, all the way up to Egypt, parts of Europe, the entire Byzantine Empire, the entire Persian Empire, they had all fallen. The only ones who fought back and sustained themselves are the Hindus. We fought back time and again, and then wherever we got the opportunity, we resurrected Hinduism. That's why we have Vema Reddy, we have the Vijayanagara Empire, Shivaji, name it. We have so many of them who could rise from the ashes and re-establish Hindu kingdom. So I think first thing is one to realize that this has been a long-standing battle we have been fighting. So there is not going to be a quick fix. And number two, don't lose heart because we have actually done well. Okay, there is no Zoroastrianism today in Iran; it's gone. And then most of Byzantine Christianity is gone; it's been destroyed, except in places like Greece, it's destroyed. Whereas uh, Turkey was the capital of Byzantine Christianity. Constantinople or Istanbul was the capital of Byzantine Christianity. That's gone. Whereas Hinduism still stands, and not only that, we have been able to come to power. If you look at the last 10, 15 years, we have asserted themselves and we have come to power. But the core of your question is, how do we educate our people, right? So our people have to be told the truth. What has happened is our Hindu gurus, our political leaders, and our education system have all failed us, right? They have never educated us about the real dangers of Islam and what Hindu society has suffered under Islamic predation for 1300 years. We were never taught this. Okay, the first thing is to educate Hindus. And then, second thing, voting in your own self interest is not something you should be ashamed of. It's something which is a minimum condition for a human being to survive. So that's something that should go into educating every Hindu from childhood. And more importantly, I think what we need to do is to build a congregation. Okay, if you take it, why is that uh, Muslims or other religious minorities have disproportionate share of power, and why do they prevail over the Hindus? The reason is simple. They are congregational religion. So when they go to a mosque, they pray together in a congregation. And I'm not saying it's a good thing. Okay, so don't get me wrong. I'm just analyzing the reality. So otherwise, I'm of the opinion that congregational form of worship is terrible because it just turns you into unthinking sheep. Whereas in Hindu tradition, you have so many darshanas that provoke you to think, that force you to inquire into the nature of the absolute, pursue what is known as 𝗤𝙗𝙗𝘖 and all of these things. So the Hindu model is the genuinely enlightening model. And I do not like congregational religions, but I'm just pointing out the reality. A religion like Islam is congregational. So you have thousands of Muslims who will congregate in a mosque, and politicians understand their power. Okay, which means if a politician were to go and appease the mullah in a mosque, then he is assured of thousands and thousands of votes. Okay, that will make all the difference between winning and losing. And Sree Iyer showed some statistics where by a few thousand votes, elections are won or lost. Okay, so this is very clear. Now, does it mean we change Hinduism into a congregational religion? The answer is no. However, we have the mechanisms to build such congregations. Take yoga, for example. Yoga is one around which thousands and thousands of our youngsters can congregate. Okay, and then they can form their own peer network. So that is one example. Or Akada, or in Tamil we call it Kalari, right? Or in Malayalam we call it Kalari. So these were the places. In North India they call it Akada. Akada is where martial arts were taught. They are still practiced. Wrestling, martial arts, kabaddi, all of these things are very closely related. And again, we should revive these institutions so that we have Hindus who can congregate as a body, and we don't have to be afraid of educating our own people, and we don't have to worry about retaliation or consequence, because now, once the politicians know that just as Muslims are congregating in their mosque every Friday, we Hindus by the thousands would be congregating at the Akada or at our yoga studios or at our Kalari, and we'll be practicing. They will bend over backwards to pieces. Okay, so these are things we need to do. How do we build knowledge base among the Hindus? How do we educate them not only about the threats of Islam, but also about why Hindus should empower themselves politically, right? So this education has to happen, and then build all these ancillary institutions and the shrenis and other things which are part and parcel of our Hindu tradition. So if you look at the Arthashastra, it talks about shreni. Okay, so if for those of you from Tamil Nadu, you would have often heard the word cheri, right? So you have a word cheri to denote the name of the place. That's actually a cognate of the Sanskrit word shreni. Okay, shreni means a guild. Okay, so all the Shilpis will come together as a guild, and then they will live in a place. So if you go to Karnataka, so if you go to Aihole, so they will have cheri or a shreni for Shilpis. Okay, that's from the 6th or 7th century CE. So these were the Shilpis who were experts at sculpting, and then they all lived in a place. So they built those congregations. Okay, so there are ways we can build congregations, even Jaatis. Okay, we can turn it into a congregation, and we can turn it to the advantage of a collective Hindu identity and vote bank. That's something we have to do.
Thank you so much. Next question, please. Vijay Bharadwaj wants to know, can central government quash Wakf Act and confiscate all their properties to divide the same with poor Muslims?
First of all, why do you want to share it with poor Muslims? Because it's not the poor Muslims who contributed to these Wakf properties. And then in India, after the Christian church, the Sunni Wakf board owns the maximum amount of land and property in India. And all of this was bequeathed upon them by the colonial rulers. First by the Muslims, the sultans and others, and subsequently by the British. So they bequeathed all these properties on the Sunni Wakf board. And it's not something they earned. It's something that was stolen and looted from the Hindu population. Those properties belong to Hindu society. They belong to India. So all you have to do is, if you're abolishing, abolish it and take it, and that becomes government property. Invest all of that in modernizing society, building society, and not distributing it. Okay, this entire distribution is a socialistic ideal. You know, it always invariably results in wastage of money and in corruption and all these things. And besides, why should you give it to poor Muslims? Okay, it's not as if poor Muslims are sympathetic to Hindus or they are pro-Hindu or any of those things. And like the data points that Sree Iyer was showing, in Muslim majority neighborhoods, virtually 100% of them voted against the BJP. Okay, so that includes the poor Muslims too. So no, I don't think we should distribute it among the poor Muslims. But I think, I'm not a lawyer, so I do not know whether the central government can straight away quash the Wakf Act or what it takes to do that, but it should be done.
Next question, please. Partha, thank you so much. Fed up with alliances. BJP fight BMC and MH alone. That is BMC's 𝗤𝗼𝗽 Mumbai Municipal Corporation and the state of Maharashtra.
So again, I think I'm not a big fan of alliance, because I do think that you need to have a very powerful ruler, especially in a country like India, which is very diverse and which is a developing nation. We need a powerful ruler who can bring in change. And Modi has been doing a fantastic job of that on many fronts, if not all the fronts. And then we need to have that. And also, some of you would have seen the Pew Research survey that came out earlier this year, some 4 or 5 months ago, where 85% of Indians said that they are not supporters of representative democracy. Okay, instead they want an autocratic system. Okay, where someone like Modi is empowered and he can take decisions. Okay, so I'm a big fan of such a model. I'm not a fan of democracy. I'm not a fan of this kind of alliances. But then alliances are the consequences of social reality, right? It's not something which is manufactured. And where possible, I think BJP should fight alone. I think Odisha was a very good example where they went alone and then they could win and they could form the government. It did not work out in Tamil Nadu, but I think next time it will. So wherever it is possible, build the base and go alone. But in some places like Maharashtra could be a good example, right? You don't want to discard alliance altogether, because Shiv Sena and the BJP, then all the other Hindutva organizations, they appeal to the same base. Okay, in other words, not having a pro-Hindu alliance would mean a split of Hindu votes, and that means our enemies, those who are seeking the destruction of Hindus, Hinduism, and India, will end up winning.
Next question, please. Thank you, Pradeep Tumati. How long before ex-Muslims start making a difference?
I think it's up to us, okay, because ex-Muslims probably are about 20%, 25% of society, okay, based on
they probably are staying away too from voting.
Exactly, right. So like, Yasir Qadhi and Zakir Naik and others, they pointed about 20-25% of them are of Muslims or ex-Muslims. Okay, so but only a small number of them come out and speak publicly, and that's when they can make the difference. The reason for that is simple, right? One, they face existential threat when they come out and criticize. Like you have Harith Sultan, apostate prophet, and ex-Muslim Sahil, and many others who do a fantastic job they are putting their own life and limb at risk in doing that. But there is a bigger challenge, right, which some of the ex-Muslims have explained, which is when a person ceases to be a Muslim and he comes out publicly about that, the family and community begins shunning that person. Okay, so if a teenager says, "Look, I'm no longer a Muslim. I don't believe in any of these things. These teachings are terrible. I'm going to become an atheist, or I'm going to become a Hindu, or I'm going to become a Buddhist," then the rest of Muslim society turns uh, hostile towards that person. Okay, makes his or her life impossible. Okay, so this is the reason they're not coming out. But I think a lot of responsibility rests with that. Okay, in one of the previous conversations, Sree Iyer and I were talking about freedom of speech, right? If we want to change anything in society, I'm not only talking about Indian society, but across the world, you need to have freedom of speech. Okay, something like the First Amendment in the United States. So only when we are free to criticize Islam and not fear consequences, only when ex-Muslims are free to criticize Islam and not face consequences, the changes can begin. And this change can be propagated only when large number of ex-Muslims and non-Muslims can not only critique Islam, but also have the ability to educate teenagers among the Muslims, right? So those who are Gen Z and below and younger, we should be able to educate them, take the message to them. Okay, and today it's possible. We have the technology, right? Everyone has iPhone, everyone has Android phone, and everyone has apps, and it's very difficult for a mullah or the ummah to control what a Muslim teenager would be watching on her iPhone. Okay, so that's where we have to think smartly, and then we have to play a role in ushering in the removing all the causing offense to religious sentiment law and all of these things from Indian Constitution, allow freedom of speech, and then think of ways where we can leverage technology and take this message not only to Hindus but also to Muslims, because so long as we don't touch Islam, okay, we allow Muslims to expand. Like Sree Iyer said, one, they expand by demographics. And recently, I think this happened a year ago, I think, Erdogan, who's the president of Turkey, he appealed, right, to Muslims to emigrate. He said, migrate to all the countries, because eventually we will take over those countries. He was referring to Europe, by demographic warfare, because we are having more children, non-Muslims are not. And like Sree Iyer pointed out, they are also having the children sooner. Okay, so by the time a Muslim woman is 20, she has already been married, she has already had 2 or 3 children. Okay, whereas a Hindu woman marries at the age of 25, 26, 27. That age is increasing now. Makes all the difference. Put it as a time series function over the next 50 years, and then what you will find is new generations have replaced those who are dead among the Hindus, whereas among the Muslims, the new generation has come up in addition to the existing older generation. Okay, this will make all the difference. So that's why it's important for us to ensure that we are able to dilute the Islamic belief and break the Islamic Ummah. And one of the best ways to go about is to focus on the youngsters, the children among Muslims, the teenagers, the Gen Z and others, so that they learn about Islam and then they start coming out of that. Let's enable them to become ex-Muslims. As more and more of them come, then they'll be able to make the difference.
Thank you so much, Venkat. And viewers, will be back in about half an hour's time to tell you about how Congress is now getting on the aggression mode. You realize what had happened to Yediyurappa in Karnataka. He's the tallest BJP leader, even though he might not be in active politics at the ground, but he has been issued a non-bailable warrant. We're going to take a look at that with senior journalist Gopi Krishnan to join us back in half an hour's time. Venkat, this was a wonderful, illuminating conversation. We need to keep at it. We need to keep waking people up. In fact, we can even do models where we can tell any constituency, unless the Hindu percentage of vote goes up to this number, 𝗒𝙧𝙤𝙀𝘗. So we can easily say this thing. It's not a difficult math, guys. So we are going to be doing some of these things for the next few elections, because we can do technology. We understand that part, and all the data is available in front of us now. Thank you so much, Venkat. Namaskar. We'll see you again soon.
Namaskar. See you again soon. Thank you.